show you what it looks like. It will be very similar to this though. I've already spoken to Mario this morning and he said there's no changes. So for assessment 1 that I was explaining to you before, you have weekly tutorial questions. Now I'll give you an example of what they might be. So I just click on here and I'll show you if you're studying the subject, you would actually go to the week that your assessment was due. So let's look at week 2, because week 2 would be your first tutorial in this subject. So you'll get an idea of what you have to prepare before you go to your assigned tutorial. Are you aware that you have to enroll in tutorials? Does everyone know that? Yep. Oh, that's good. Very good. So week 2 is a very easy week, yes?
Because business and commerce, they do like the same subjects. Do tutorials the same for both business and commerce students? Like, will your tutorials be mixed?
Yes, yes. You might have some students that are doing a business degree, are doing a commerce degree, are doing an engineering degree. There's all these different people. So when you get to meet everyone, you'll find that there'll be a nice mix in each class. Okay. So week 2 is just introductions. So in this tutorial, you'll be introduced to your tutor and your class colleagues. Tutors will take you through the subject outline, in particular the assessment requirements. This is a chance for you to get familiar with your tutor, subject requirements and tutor expectations. So really you just come along with a smile that day. A smile and maybe the outline. Do you like things in hard copy or on your computer, or what's your favourite way of having material? Both?
Depending on what it is.
Depending on what it is, yep. So you probably have been told that you can download your course outline from Moodle. Are you aware of that as well? Okay, I'll show you that on this screen. You will always have it up on your Moodle page. And what I recommend is saving it on your computer or a USB or something that you can maybe carry around and maybe make notes on, print it out if you need to, but it's always on the Moodle site. So if you log on to any computer, just go straight to the Com 101 site and you can always get access to it. Okay? So that's just to show you that one. Now let me show you one that's really, you have to actually go and do some work. So week 3 tutorial. So in the lecture you will watch a movie. It's called Enron, the Smartest Guys in the Room. Now, that will really open your mind to how business try to get away with doing the wrong thing. And they can be successful, but it can't be sustained. So that's what this is all about. How a business really tried to make the most money they can. And it's probably a movie that you need to see for this subject because it highlights the reason why you guys need to study it. Okay, it's very, very important. And then you would just answer these questions, type them up. What I would do if I was you to make it easier, download this and then type your answers straight onto it. Okay, that's the easiest thing that you need to do. You'll have the questions there and then your responses underneath. Okay, yep.
Is this just like a draft of what we may be doing, or actually what we are doing?
Well, I did speak to Mario this morning and he said there was no changes, so I'd say it'll be very, very close to what I'm going to show you. Yep. So, and you'll have all this. Once you can get onto the site, he'll have all this in the tutorial folder and you can go straight to it. But with this one, you couldn't answer these questions without watching the movie, and he'll have it on in the lecture theatre. And then if you get stuck and you can't see it, you can always Google it and watch it yourself, but it's like 2 hours. It's quite long. So you'd answer all those questions, and that's how you would get your marks for that particular week. So does that make sense to everyone? Is that nice and easy to do? Having a go. Get your marks. And assessment 1, I found that if students are really diligent, answer all their questions, they can easily get 100% in this assessment task. So I'd be going for 100% if I was you, okay? So that's what assessment 1 is all about. Now, I said before that you can always go onto the site and have a look at your subject outline. So if I click on the link here, you'll see the subject outline will come up. And depending on what campus you're studying at, you would choose your outline. So if you guys are all going to be here in Wollongong, you pick the Wollongong one. So you can, like I said, save it. I'd save it onto your computer or USB or something, or print it out, whatever you like. But it's there for you. So if we have a look at, it usually has all the details of who the coordinators are so that you can contact them. So this will be the same. It'll be Associate Professor Mario Fernando, and all his details are there. If you wanted to go and see him, if you had a problem, his consultation times will always be, for all the coordinators, will always be on the outline. Okay? So Frank Neri is also he's the lecturer, but usually he takes the subject in spring. So if you're taking this in spring, it'll be Frank will be the coordinator of the subject. And anyone that you need to contact in teaching role, they'll actually, all their details will be there as well. So read through all this, because there are specific ways that you need to follow to send emails. There is rules that you need. You need to put clear information if you want to get good information back, okay? So I'm sure you've all heard the saying garbage in, garbage out, so you must be nice and clear on what you would like so that you get what you need. The outline's a quick way of finding what you need. Now, you will always have on every single outline your learning outcomes. It's a good idea to go back to these to make sure that you are doing what you need, so that you can get through the subject well. So you will always have a subject description for every single subject that you do. Now, the next important part is the reading, references, and any additional material that you might need. For this particular subject, Shaw et al. Tends to be utilised the most. There is a new textbook out, 2016, but I'm not sure whether Mario has decided to go with that new one or not, or this 2013. If you are studying Com 101 before you buy a textbook, there are something like 1,200 students that study this subject a year, if not more. Have a look for a second-hand one before you buy a brand new one. That's my recommendation, because this particular textbook is like $140 or $150. You will pick up one from a student that just, has done the subject and they don't really need the textbook again, and you'll pick it up a lot cheaper, okay? So, and even if Mario decides to go to the 2016 one, there's no way that anyone will have that. This will be the first year if he does that. Whereas the 2013 one we've been using for a few years, but don't go back any further. I think the one before that was 2009, too old, and the cases are not relevant to what you're looking at now. So don't go back any further than this one if you're buying a second-hand one, okay? So some key references that you can look up from the library. You would have had, I think it was Rachel the other day came in and spoke to you, Rachel Jones. Yep. Yes.
Yeah, so we already bought our book common one. If it's not the one that he wants, I think.
Okay. So which one did you buy?
It's the 2016 one.
The new one, 2016. Perfect. That's fine. That's fine. Definitely, that's fine. Because that only came out towards the end of last year, and it wasn't used last year at all. So if you've bought it, you will have no problem selling it at the end of the session if you don't need it anymore. So even meet up with a few people while you're here and give them your details and on-sell it to them in the future. Yep. Because usually when we get a particular edition, we use it for at least 4 years because it's too expensive to keep on, updating. So, so keep all those little tips in mind. But all these references you will find in the library if you go to a database. And as I said, the other day Rachel came in and explained to you how to search the database for articles and things like that. You could just copy and paste one of these into Google Scholar, and you'll find it easily. Go into the library site to do it and log on because you'll have a greater access to documents. Some further reading and just the journals that are relevant to this particular subject. But you don't need to do anything with those. So you'll always have the information about the lecture, and because this is a really big subject, there's usually about 24 tutorials here in Wollongong, so it's massive. So it's repeated because it gives everyone an opportunity to either go to the one in the morning, or usually there's one at night, so that if you were working during the day you could still make a tutorial. So that's the really good thing about it. Mario started to record the lectures. Have you heard of Echo 360? Anyone used Echo 360? No? Okay. Sorry? No? Okay. All right. Well, it's a very good thing because it means you can listen to it anywhere, anytime. You can download it and walk around with your headset on and listen to it if you want to. If you want to do two things at once, you can do that. And then you will have the lecture program always tells you exactly what's happening when you come into the lectures. Now, what you have to prepare is for the tutorials. Now, when I showed you that list of all the different weeks before on Moodle, do you remember what week 2 said that you needed to do? Just come in with a big smile. I just said that, the smile. But you know what I mean. Come in and get ready to meet your colleagues and all that from your class and your tutor. Okay? Then in week 3, the recent examples of irresponsible business, well, we know what that's about, don't we? Because I showed you what you have to do for week 3. Can you remember what that was? Watch the movie. So you watch the movie in the lecture, and then you prepare those questions with your answers to bring to the tutorial in week 3. Okay? So that'll be the same each week. You'll have different activities. And it will always tell you if there's no tutorials running on a particular week. Now, I highly recommend that the week that Mario looks at the moral philosophies, do not miss that week.
If we've chosen times where our lecture is like just say an hour before that tutorial and we have to like prepare all those questions in like an hour from like the gap.
No. The way it works is the very first week you only have a lecture, and then the second week you have a lecture, and the activities usually associated with the week before. So you're not expected to say be at a lecture at I don't know 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning, and then have to complete all your work by 2:30 in the afternoon. It doesn't work like that. It's usually the week after to give you time to understand it. You might have to read a chapter in a textbook, that sort of thing. So you will have plenty of time to get your work completed. Okay. But the moral philosophies is all the theoretical concepts that you need to learn for this particular subject. They're not easy, so it's a good starting place to get your head around them. If you've read the chapter, I think they come from chapter 2 off the top of my head, Mario will clarify them really well with different examples, and it might take you a few goes at reading it to get your head around them. Okay, so that's a very, very important lecture. So all the different topics that you'll look at. Now, the assessments. As I said before, with the tutorial assessment 1 having a go, it's worth 28%. It might be slightly different this session, but roughly about 28%. And most of my students get 28% because it's just having a go. It's answering the questions, bringing the work into the tutorials. It's not right or wrong, it's just having a go. Okay, so that is an easy 28% to get. No trickery at all, easy to get. Assessment 2 is the essay, which is the reflective essay, and I'm going to go through that with you in a second. Students find that harder, okay? So that takes a lot more work to actually get it completed really well. And then your final exam's worth 50%. So when you're answering your questions, I said to you before that it's a really good idea to download that particular week's questions, type straight onto there, because to have a go at it, print it out, type it all up, you'll get 4 marks, and that's 100% for that week. If you can only complete, say there's 4 questions and you only get around to completing 2 questions, you'll still get 2 marks. But if, I don't know, you decide an hour before the class that you're going to do the work, so you write it all up by hand on a piece of paper, you'll get 0. It's not worth it. It's good to have a go at it, but don't we want the 4 marks or the 2 marks? So please think about it, prepare, put it into your diary when they're due so that you know when to get them completed. Usually it's only a page, 2 pages is all you really need to complete. You can draw things on there freehand if you want, if it's something's appropriate, but you need to type up your answers. Usually there's a list of weeks that you have an opportunity to get those marks, okay? So I know you look at that and what do you think? That's a lot of weeks? Is that what you're all thinking? No, that's okay? So anyway, that's what you have to do at all those weeks if you want to get all those marks. So now, only this.
So is it in the 13th week or is there additional weeks after that the final exam is?
The final indication of how you stand in the subject. So you can then go to your exam confidently, studying away, you know your stuff, and you've got all your feedback, and then it's just a matter of completing the exam to complete the subject. Now, another thing that Mario does, he's very, as I said before, he's very passionate about giving you guys the best information and helping you as much as possible. He dedicates one lecture to completing this assessment. Tips, hints, just to help you do well in it. And usually he does that early on in the session week. Usually it's around about week 5. Okay? So it's another very good week to be there so you don't miss anything. You'll always have the questions and all. You always have the questions and that you need. And he usually breaks it down so you know roughly how many words to put in each section. So you don't have to come up with this yourself. It's all there, and it's just a matter of following the instructions. Asking your tutor if you get stuck. In the lecture, Mario will give you plenty of opportunities to ask questions as well if you need, more questions answered if something's not clear. So in this time last year, we looked at the theory of Kantianism. It could be something entirely different. It could be egoism this time. It could be Kant's theory. So there's a few different ones that it could be. So usually you focus on one. Then usually with the final exam, Mario will give you some hints on what to study in week 13. If you're reading all the different chapters of the textbook, you'll have a good idea of the content. Attending the lectures, completing your assessment 1 activities each week, you will find that when he gives you the tips for the final exam, you'll know exactly what to focus on. Okay, so it's not going to be a massive surprise when you get into the final exam.
I know this is a stupid question.
It's not, never a stupid question. Yep.
Do you have like practice papers to go off like we did?
Always.
Is there a cutoff of like when they become irrelevant?
Usually, because we have used the same textbook for this subject since 2009, same authors, the concepts don't change. The examples do, the cases do. So generally speaking, an exam that you might be looking at that was, say, 2012, 2014 would not be dramatically different to 2017. The multiple choice questions are still going to be the same type of content. If you go to the assessment to information, it will give you everything about what is required. 2016 we looked at VW. Is everyone aware of what happened with VW? Yes. So it was a fantastic one to write about and consider ethical theories and what they did and that type of thing. So that was a great case study. Now that was last year. It'll be a different one this year. And this is where you will submit your Turnitin, but I'll go through that in a minute. There's also reflective writing resources, which I'm going to show you what it looks like. So all these will be available to you from Moodle. So I'm going to quickly show you them today, but they're going to be there for you to go back to as many times as you want to do the very best job you can. Always a good idea to look at the marking criteria of every assessment so that you don't miss completing something silly, because you want to get the most marks that you can. So if you have a look, for instance, we just bring this up quickly, and you will always have this with your assignment so that you know what you have achieved. So this is the criteria that you would end up with your marks. So if you complete the questions as required, these are the marks that you will get for that. So if you decide not to put your work through, turn it in, and your referencing is so poor, you would end up with 0 when referencing and be referred to Mario. That's what would happen. So important to consider your referencing and put it through, turn it in. So you can see the whole way up there, it's quite clear how you end up with either failing it, passing it, receiving a credit, distinction, or high distinction. Okay? So it's quite clear what you have to achieve to get those marks. Okay? So always look at that before you do your final submission, just to make sure that you have ticked all the boxes. Okay? So we'll just leave this site now for a minute. So I want to go back to I'll go back to the library because I want to show you where you locate final exam papers for any subject that you're studying. So if you go to the library and you go to subject readings, guys, are you watching this? This is for your final exam, where to find them. So subject readings, and if we look up Com 101, we'll pick Australia and see up the top here, past exams. So you just click on that and it's 2014 is the one that's up there, and you would just click on Wollongong. Oh, you have to log in with your details. I'll put mine in just to give you an idea of what it looks like. But you would put any subject code that you're studying, and then that's the exam. So that's there for you. You could look at that now if you wanted to. Okay? Any questions? Is that good? Sorry? Sorry, what was that?
I just wanted to know how many multiple choices there were.
Oh, I think there's 15, is there? 15? Yeah, 15. 15 and short answer questions. Okay, you'll have 6 and you choose 4. Which, sorry?
Basically, I reckon response was.
No.
You get 10 marks, you've got to explain 3 reasons, 2 reasons, 2 positive.
It's short answer, but it's still, you need to make sure, yeah, it's not like an essay or anything like that. So, okay? Okay, so that is available on every subject. Okay, we have to do that now. We used to have a choice in the past whether or not we let you guys do that, but now we don't have a choice. We have to do it. Okay, we have to give reasons if we don't want to do it. So most of us, we don't mind you guys having a look at a past exam, just to make it easier for you. All right, so that's that. Now, back to our PowerPoint. Okay, so I've gone through, I've gone through Assessment 1 and Assessment 2 for you, just to give you a bit of an idea of what you need to do. But have a look at the new one when it comes out, in case there's any little differences. It will be a different case study. I don't think there'll be much changes in the questions, but the case study will be a different one for sure. So, reflective practice. Let's have a look at why we need to complete reflective writing. This only goes for a few minutes, so.
Reflective writing is a process of putting into writing your reflective thinking. Reflective thinking is actually the important part of the process. The writing is just a way of documenting that this has happened. When people first start to reflect, they often think that it's about looking back at an event and thinking about what they've learned from the experience. What they don't realise is that it is equally about looking forward, imagining future events and thinking about how the lessons you've learned could be applied. It is therefore a three-stage process: looking back and analysing and projecting into the future. Without the third stage, it could be pointless. It's also really important that when you look back at an event, you don't just concentrate on it in isolation. You need to take a metaphorical step backwards so that you can see it in the context of other events and other learning. These can and should influence your viewpoint when reflecting on that event. All of this can be written about in your reflective writing. When most people reflect, they write about what happened, about when it happened, often in the form of a timeline. I did this, then I did that. They write about who was involved and perhaps where it happened. These are useful things, but they are basically descriptive, and writing about them does not actually contribute to useful reflection. Instead, you should write about your thoughts about the event, during it, after it, and since. You should also include information about how it made you feel. Were you uncomfortable doing it? Did you feel confident about it? Instead of what, when, who, and where, you need to write about why. Why did you do it that way? How? How will you change it in the future? You should also think about the implications. You learned something, but so what? How does that help you? Writing that answers these questions is truly reflective. So, how much description is needed and how much reflection? Description is important, but it should be kept to a minimum. It exists merely in order to put the reflection into context. A typical piece of reflective writing should have short bouts of description followed by a lot of reflection. One important part of reflection is hindsight. This is the ability to look back at an event with knowledge that wasn't available during the event. Typically, some hindsight will initially hit immediately following an event as a result of knowledge gained in the process of that event. This is the if only moment when you first look back. What then happens is you gain more hindsight gradually over time as more knowledge becomes available. This can be incredibly frustrating if you think you can't change things. However, if at the point you reflect, you realise you've learned a lot from the experience and you can change things in the future, this is actually very empowering. When writing about that learning, it is important to not only think about how it can be directly applied to similar situations, but how it can be adapted and translated to other situations. For instance, if you have to give a presentation, you may spend a lot of time preparing for it and be really happy with the way that it went when you delivered it. But what if someone afterwards asks you a really awkward question, one you hadn't prepared for? You might feel a bit flustered and not answer it how you would have liked. When you reflect on this, you may write about how you did not like that feeling, and in future presentations you'll need to think about more possible questions and prepare answers beforehand. However, you may also think about other situations where thinking beyond the immediate problem would come in useful. And you may realise that despite being unprepared, you did manage to give an answer of sorts. This may make you realise that you can think on your feet and give you confidence to do the same in other situations. You could put all of these thoughts into your reflective writing. If you imagine an experience as a wet cloth, the purpose of reflection is to wring every last drop of learning out of that experience. It's also about showing that you can think about how you can put that learning into action. Nobody's saying this is easy. When you first start writing your reflections down, it can seem very strange. You may learn things about yourself that you're not comfortable with. You can feel like you're really struggling uphill. However, when it becomes a regular activity, it can feel perfectly normal and relatively easy. The great thing about reflecting is that it's very rewarding. When you realise that you can analyse things and work out possible ways forward for yourself, your self-confidence gets a real boost. Reflective writing is just a way to formalise and encourage such reflective thinking.
Okay, so if you want to go back and have a look at that when you actually start thinking about reflective writing, this link is on Moodle, okay? Now, this is a way of looking at what reflective writing is as well. It's justifying your actions, solving problems, really considering deeper meaning so that you can change whatever it is that you're doing. It's assumptions, belief, values. It makes you revisit experiences that you've had. And it's all about you. So it's all an important thing to do. It's something that you can really learn and take with you right into not just your studies, but right into life, so that you can learn from the experiences that you have. So it's a combination of how you go about thinking about what's happening and being critical about whether something did work and why, maybe why it worked or why it didn't work. But it's an important thing that we're using more and more in all walks of life. So it's all about examining what has happened to you professionally or personally, but it's a good way of looking at the theory to practice aspects of just life, okay? And that's why it's used so much. So having responses to your experiences, your opinions, events, or new information. How you feel about those responses. It's a really good way of exploring your learning, helping you to gain a greater self-knowledge, ways to clarify and better understand what you're learning. Joining the dots, basically, trying to get the bigger picture of why things happen so that you can take that with you and learn even more. Helps you with your writing skills, and it's a good way of making meaning out of what you study. So in your book, I think I'm taking one tutorial and Anita's taking the other one from memory. So it'll give you a chance to experience this. Okay, have a go at doing something this afternoon. So does anyone have any questions on that? Is that pretty straightforward? Yeah? Oh, good. Okay, so I think that I put a different one in here, how to go about writing. Hope I didn't do the same one again. Yeah, this is another one I found.
Hey, welcome to another video. This video explains what reflective writing is. It's also called writing a reflection. And when you write a reflection, you write your thoughts about something rather than writing a summary or a description of that something itself. That's what the definition is. So a lot of times people say, write a reflection, but people don't know what to do. And the reason why they're asking you to do that, your teachers and others, is because it really helps you get a deeper understanding of what you read or what you see. And the reason why is because you're making connections to things you already know. And so it's a really great way when you write it to really improve your comprehension of what you're reading, or what you saw, or anything else you experienced. And a reflection is not a description paper. It gives the reader a good understanding of how you feel or what you think. Remember that in almost all cases, pretty much in all cases, the person who's reading your reflection has seen the same video and the same or read the same book or article that you have. So there's no need to really describe it. You just need to explain to the person what your reaction is, how you feel about it. So here's an example of what to do. You should just use these as an easy way to get started with writing reflection. You can say, I was surprised that I can't believe that such and so acted the way she did because, all right, or you could say, I agree with so-and-so, or I disagree with so-and-so because, and then always explain why. If you say you agree or you disagree, always explain why you agree or why you disagree. If you say, for example, that something reminded you of when you were younger, go into why it did. Here's another example. The scene with the so-and-so gave me the creeps. How could, whatever it is, how could Sheila have stolen those apples from the store? Whatever it is. You could also talk about a prediction. You could say things like, later in the book, I think that such and such is going to happen. You could talk about, if you were there, what would you have done? Or really anything else that has to do with what you thought or how you felt. Again, don't spend too much time describing or summarizing. Don't say what happened and when it happened, because the person reading it already knows that. So here's an example. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, every single thing, but if you take a look at this picture, and you had to write a reflection on this picture, here's something that's not reflective. A man is sitting in a chair inside what used to be a house. He's wearing a white shirt and blue jeans. Okay, that's not reflective. That's just descriptive. But if you say things like, the picture makes me feel sad, I wonder how he'll rebuild his life, I wonder if he lost any family members. Reflection is really thinking back and thinking about what a book or an article or a movie or a picture or anything, what did it do to you? How did it change the way you think? How did it make you feel? What sort of things would you like to do in reaction to this? And this is what it is. These sorts of questions, when you answer it, you're answering reflection questions. So just download this document. It's at loveyourpencil.com, and just you're going to search for reflection, and you'll see this, download it, print it, and do it. And at the end, of course, we have an assessment. And here we have is a slightly disturbing short story, or part of a short story. And then what you're going to do is, for each sentence, you're going to circle yes if it's reflective and no if it isn't reflective. And if you get them all right, then you will be an expert on reflection. So I hope that this has helped. And I do want to say one other thing. When I say that you should not be spending too much time describing or summarizing, that doesn't mean that you're not going to describe or summarize in your reflective writing. Of course, you're going to have to describe what happened. For example, you could say, when Sheila stole those apples, of course, that's describing the scene. But then you're going to go on and you're going to talk about how you felt about what happened and what happened to Sheila as a result, and did it remind you of something that happened to you or somebody that you knew, and so forth. And so don't be afraid to write a little bit of description or a little bit of summary, but most of it should be on just telling the reader how you felt or what you thought about the subject of the reflective writing. So I sure hope this helps, and download the document for free. Make as many copies as you like.
Okay. So that's just to give you a bit of an idea about how to go about it. If we have time today, I'm going to get you to reflect on your breakfast this morning. But we'll see how we go for time, okay? Because there's a few other things that I need to go through with you. Well, if you didn't have breakfast, yes, yeah, I know some people don't eat breakfast, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so I think it was clear in that little clip what reflective writing is not. You don't just put forward what you see, you have to actually critically analyse it as well. So make a judgment on it. It's no good just putting the facts out there or describing what's going on. You need to interpret what you believe is happening as well. So to do well in reflective writing, that's what you need to do. So the thing about it is very subjective. So you have to be reflective and logical. You can bring in personal information. It can be hypothetical, critical, and creative. Because you've experienced it, you can bring in some of your own experiences as well. So it doesn't have to all be theory. You don't have to bring a lot of theory in, but you do have to bring some in there, okay, of what's happening. It's a different writing style. You're allowed to use the I felt, whereas quite often we don't like the first person being used at university. But with reflective writing, it is totally acceptable to use I, because it's how you feel about what happened with the VW case. That's what students had to do last year. They had to put themselves in the position of the general manager and try and understand what he was thinking. So, and what they would do if they were the general manager of VW. So you'll get that experience as well, whatever case that you are, to put yourself in that position and see how maybe you would do things differently. Or maybe you agree with what that person did because you want to make as much money as possible. But you have to justify why you feel that way, okay? So it helps you explore certain things that are happening in business life, and that's the idea of it. So it means that you do have to do a bit of describing, not too much, but a bit to set the scene. You have to explain what's going on, and you can be very expressive in how you interpret what's happening and how you feel about it, how it affects you, and how it affects other people around you. In the case of VW, we know that it affected a lot of people. A lot of people bought the cars because they thought they were doing something for the environment, and they were cheated very, very badly. Okay, so when you complete your reflective writing and you think, oh, I've got 3 weeks before it's due, I'm going to put it through Turnitin to see how I'm going. It's only a draft, a very rough draft, but I want to see how I'm going. So why we're using Turnitin is because it's a good way to check for plagiarism, and we have so many students who study this subject every year, as I said before, 1,200, 1,500, something like that a year, but not just at this university. At universities around Australia, they have to study this subject. This is a compulsory subject for a lot of degrees. So there are students that don't want to do the work and they cheat. Now, I'll give you an example that I know about personally. I had last year a university in South Australia, a lecturer contact me and say, Geraldine, I have a student whose reflective essay is almost identical to a student in South Australia. Can I access Turnitin to check how close they are? So I gave the lecturer permission to do that. Because once a student submits it, like in my subject, I've got the power over who can actually see absolutely everything. But the idea is to check for plagiarism at the end of the day. And some students do self-assignments, and we know that. We're not stupid. And this is a way of making sure that was stamping it out, basically. I have seen it in other subjects as well. I had one student year, spring session, I think it was spring session, yeah, who had something like 68% similarity. Now, before I said anything, or I had to go and look at it, and basically it wasn't that it was taken from another student. It was this student ran out of time and copied and pasted everything from the internet straight into the assignment. So it was all direct sources the whole way through. You can't do that. That's just inappropriate. So, and this student, that was the second time that she had done it. So, yes?
What's the appropriate percentage amount? I
Okay.
counted it was like 20%.
It depends. Honestly, I would never say to you, this is the percentage you need to go for, because it depends on what you're using, and it depends on how many times you submit your assignment through Turnitin, because your name starts adding to the list. Your name, your student number. So the more assignments you put through Turnitin, the higher your rate, your name is going to come up as a percentage. So I would never say it's 20%, it's 30%, it's 10%. I check everyone's originality score on their merits. So I would go through all my students and have a look at the report, and it might be just that they've used a source that 50 other students have thought was good for this assignment. Fine, that's fine. As long as it's not direct sources, I can tell by looking at it whether it is or not. So it's something that, yeah, so don't get too weighed down by a percentage. Follow the instructions, like if there's something that really has to be fixed, fix it. But, or if you're not sure, if you find that you do get your originality score back and you don't exactly understand what's going on, let your tutor know. They will interpret it for you and they'll help you bring your score down. Now, there are certain colours that are basically highlighted to tell you whether you need to be doing something or not. So I'll go through those colours, and I don't expect you to remember them by the time you go to do it, but it'll all be on, this is all on Moodle as well, so you can go back and have a look. So the idea is, it's to help you identify, to see whether you're identifying and acknowledging the work of others, helping you to reference correctly, because the sooner you get your head around it, the easier you will find your life at university. Also helps you be able to, if you have this fantastic direct quote that you must put in your assignment, it's giving you the right way of doing it, exactly how you do it. Now, just on direct quotes, keep in mind your assignment can never ever be any more than 10% with direct quotes. Keep that in mind. That's a rule. Anything more than that, it's not your assignment. Okay, so no more than 10% of your overall assignment can be direct quotes.
How many direct quotes roughly would that be?
Well, it depends on your assignment, because you could have, I'm pretty sure this essay is 1,500 words. So it would just, yeah. So it's really not that much. So it has to be fantastic for you to use it. Okay, that's, if you think it's that good, you have to put it in there. That's when you do it. But some people get a bit carried away, and there's one in every paragraph type of thing. Don't do it.
I can't recall if you said this or not, but is the essay in class or out? Like,
Okay, with Mario, it will be, you'll do it at home, and then that's why you're submitting it through Turnitin. For you guys that are doing it in spring, the chances are with Frank, it'll be in class. Okay? Because they have different ideas on how to do things. Mario likes you to do it at home reflectively, and then submit it through Turnitin, whereas Frank likes it to be completed in class, no Turnitin, but you do it in class in 50 minutes. So it depends on how you feel about that, but that's just two different coordinators, two different ideas, okay? That's what happens in all subjects. They usually change a little bit from session to session. Okay, so with this particular assignment, once you've done it and you put it through, turn it in as a draft, you can fix what you want before the final submission through Business Central. Now, you need to print off a copy of your Turn-It-In report and attach it to the back of your essay. So that means that when your tutor is marking your work, your tutor will have all that information and be able to mark it all completely. Otherwise, if they don't, they'll then have to go to Turn-It-In themselves and find you in there, okay? So you don't want to do that. You want to make yourself look as the best you can, so do follow the instructions. So this is how it works as far as the colours go. The red is the content. You need to make sure that you acknowledge another person's work if you're using it. If there's red in there, that means that maybe you haven't done it right. You haven't acknowledged their work, or you haven't done it properly. So red means you have to fix it. Punctuation, maybe you haven't you've put a direct quote in, but you haven't, it's not right. So you might have to go back and look, follow the guidelines for referencing from the library site, which Rachel did Rachel show you how to look at the referencing guides the other day? Yep. So it's easy. It's got examples. You just have a look and see, and you'll see straight away where you've gone wrong. It's very, very easy to follow. The quality of references. Now, at this point, I don't know whether anyone said to you or not, but don't use Wikipedia at all for anything. Because if you do that, your tutor will just cringe, okay, when they're marking your work. They'll think, oh my gosh, because that's not good enough quality, okay? It might be a good starting point to get your head around a topic, but not a good source to put in an assignment, okay? Yes?
So for example, like I've done my assignment and like I've done a quote and I haven't acknowledged it at all, like it's practically plagiarism, and then I put it in and it says it's wrong. Like, do I get in trouble, or can I change it from it telling me it's wrong?
Okay, that's why you should put your work through Turn-It-In early so that you have a chance to fix it.
So
Yep.
we can change it without getting penalised?
Yes, if you do it beforehand.
Is there still that rule where you have to wait 24 hours before you can turn it in again?
Okay, I don't know about that rule, the 24-hour rule, but what I do know is the more times you put it through Turn-It-In, the slower it is to get it back. So if you say your assignment was due on a Friday and you put it through on the Monday, you would get it back, usually the first time you get it back really fast. I've found that I get mine back in like 15 minutes, 20 minutes the first time. Although I haven't ever put an assignment through twice, but I've heard a lot of other students tell me that the second time can take 24 hours, and then if they do it a third time, it can take like 3 days. So just give yourself that time to get it back so that you can see that you're on the right track. So you have to be organised with this. This one you really need to get done early so that you have the chance to make the most of Turn-It-In. Okay? Because you won't be very popular if you submit your assignment with a little note on there, I didn't get it back from Turn-It-In. Your tutor will, I don't know whether Mario's going to allow marks being lost for that or what, but don't do it. Okay, set yourself up to do it correctly and make sure that you have it done in time. Now, it'll also give you this colour here, the format of references, if you haven't completed it correctly. So can anyone tell me how you format references in business? Sorry? Author date, which system? Harvard. But author date is all right for in-text, but for your reference list it must be everything. You've got to put everything, and it has to be in alphabetical order. Okay? Now, there's a lot of, I'm sure Rachel would have showed you this as well. You can go into journal articles and you can actually download the reference. Did she show you how to do that? Yes, yeah. So you can actually formulate your reference list straight from your journal articles, straight into your, and it's going to be formatted the style that you want. Okay, so Harvard. So for me, when I'm doing all my stuff for my PhD, I have to do APA, and then I come back here and I've got to do Harvard, so sometimes my head's all over the place. So it's good to have all these resources to help you reference correctly. Okay? So how it works is everyone who puts material into the internet, even as far as selling assignments, that still comes up. It looks at published works, it looks at databases, and then, as I said before, any previous Turnitin assignments also are looked at. So it's quite detailed what the system looks at. So it's important to get it right. So for those of you that haven't seen it before, but this is what it looks like. It'll come up with, when you go in to turn it in, it'll give you an originality score, and it'll break it all down into the different areas. So this particular one here, submitted to university student paper, 7%. That suggests to me that there might have been a question that a particular course, the subjects, the students had to answer this one question, and they've all put the question into the assignment. So you can imagine they've all got the same thing. So that could be the 7% there. You can see all the different sources, internet sources, again another student paper, but it could be a question, it could be something simple that's bringing that up. It could even be something like putting on the top of the page Com 101, and say 50 students put Com 101 on the top of their page. That could be something like that. So that's why we look at every single assignment, because quite often it can be explained if they tend to be a little bit higher. Again, table of contents, if everyone's putting a table of contents in there. Okay, it would be the same sort of headings, and that's going to be, it can show what everyone's doing. So just a very clear thing to remember is if you get the red, it must be fixed. If it's green, you don't need to worry about it too much, okay? If you're really concerned, ask your tutor for help, okay? But it just might mean that other students are also using similar resources because you're all doing the same assignment. If you're, for instance, you can imagine what it was like last year when everyone was talking about the VW case. It was VW. So it was everyone had this massive percentage of content, but there was no problem with it. It was just that was the case that they were looking at, and because they were referring to it so much and everyone else was, that's the reason why it came up. So the other things that you can avoid having a high originality score is make sure that when you determine what the name of your assignment's going to be, keep it the same even though you resubmit it over and over again. Make sure that your references are included in your Turnitin submission, otherwise it'll just go through the roof. Do not include assignment topic questions, so it's better not to really put questions and that in there. Whoever's marking your work already knows what you're doing. They already have the list of everything. If it's easier for you to write an assignment with the questions, put them in there when you're working on it and then whip them out before you put it through Turnitin. That's all you have to do. Take them out. Save a copy with the questions in it, and you can work through them, and then when you put it through Turnitin, take those questions out. Okay? Just things like that can make a difference to your score. So if, for instance, the example I gave you before of the student that had 68%, she then resubmitted hers and it came back to 42%. I still had to look at it because that still was relatively high, and all she'd done was taken some of those direct ones out but left. There was still all these other ones, so she didn't really fix it up. So that has to be sort of consistent. You couldn't go from like 68% down to 10% because that's not right either. There's a problem there as well. So it has to be, you can see where a student has tried to work on it. So to get the most out of Turnitin, start early, put your drafts through. Leaving it to the last minute, you won't have time to resubmit. So give yourself that time and work on it. Then when you submit your work, make sure that it's the most current Turnitin report that is stapled to your reflective essay. Okay?